Yeah, I was worried about Tormented Souls 2. I just recently played the first one and found it desperately derivative, clinging pretty hard to purely emulating old school Resident Evil and really only being able to live in that shadow, too thin in its systems and brought down by some ridiculous puzzle stuff. Combat was kind of a non-issue and the story was just lame.
What's going on here? Why is that weird man walking around the operating table with that weird chandelier in his hands?
But with Tormented Souls 2, rather than just copy more of Resident Evil's homework, they really channeled those influences and grew into something that feels kind of like its own thing. It's still old school survival horror, full stop, and yes, it is still very much Resident Evil inspired, and honestly, it's not very different than the first game, but everything here is just better crafted, more intentionally paced, and much, much better acted.
This place smells old. You said it was gonna be a bougie little health spa. When can we go back to Canada?
Come on. We're only booked for a short stay, Anna. It'll fly by.
And I think that's what most people who played the first game wanted. More of this old school survival horror stuff, just tighter tuned, better executed. It's not perfect, nor is this going to be a classic, but it is a toothsome little game that feels earnest and pretty eager to improve in its failings from the first time around the block. There are a couple things here, like some issues with the combat and some camera work that feels a little tougher than the first one, or its silly story and flat characters that feel pretty unchanged from the original.
Okay, I'll bite. I'll get you your book.
Excellent. Now, be careful, or this place will kill you.
But overall, it's a successful attempt to make an authentic entry into the series and the survival horror pantheon. And yeah, to be totally fair, it's going to be hard to evolve this genre much, right? It's well worn and true to a style of game that is not mainstream anymore. So for fans of this genre, when a game comes out attempting to really capture that feeling, when it hits, it really hits. And I'm happy to report that Tormented Souls 2 hits.
Be at peace, both of you. This is a holy place.
So before we get into all the nitty gritty, I think it's important to see how this game evolved from the first one. If you haven't watched my video on that, I encourage you to do so. I'll put a link down below if you want to click it. And hey, speaking of clicking things, maybe consider tapping that thumb thing and maybe the sub button. It does help me a lot. Thank you. And as for spoilers, I will be talking about weapons and some bosses and the first couple environments you'll explore in the game, but I'll refrain from any big story spoilers or late game stuff. I'll keep it light. Cool? Yeah, so Tormented Souls 2 plays functionally identically to the first game. You play as Caroline Walker and you paw around a dark mansion uncovering a twisted plot against you and your sister while scavenging for resources, dodging or dispatching cruel monsters, and solving a heap ton of puzzles. You have fixed camera angles that hide information and obscure enemies. You have inventory management where you examine objects for more information or count your precious bullets. And you have a map to help you navigate twisted hallways and underground passages. You'll have some sparse cutscenes and read plenty of notes and piece together a story that is admittedly the weakest part of the game.
This crazy cult is after my sister, and the chapel is the last place I saw her.
It's all here from the first game, but everything here just is more enjoyable to interact with. The environments look sharp with evocative lighting and a varied, if still nonsensical mansion to explore. The combat is its own thing, but generally feels better, and with some nice touches like Caroline retaining the ability to lightly pace around while firing, or getting jumped back under the immense recoil of the shotgun, which feels mighty to fire. And the puzzles, the biggest point of criticism from the community from the original, feel much, much better here. Retaining some of that esoteric flair that I love seeing these types of games, but for the most part remaining grounded in the game world, relying on your attention to detail and observations of the environments around you to find the solution. And they're paced out pretty well too, with a nice balance between quiet moments of exploration and flashes of combat, and then back to puzzling and scavenging. So the combat, let's get this part out of the way because it is the most negative that I'm going to be in this review. That way I can get through it and talk about the stuff that I enjoy. I do not like the combat here and most of the stuff that kind of orbits it. I don't have an issue with the framework of the combat. It still holds true to that stand and shoot style where you're using generous snap-on effect to make sure that Caroline is tracking that monster that's off screen. and slowly pacing away from those monsters as they lumber towards you as you fill them with lead, or nails in this case. It's more of an issue with the monsters themselves and how they're designed. They're way too fast and unrelenting, and the environments that you're fighting them in do not allow for careful movement, and Caroline isn't mobile enough to kite or dodge these dudes effectively. One of the most common enemies that you fight are these zombie dudes that move about as fast as like a Crimson Head from the Resident Evil remake. They will regularly ambush you from around corners or come bolting out from behind a tricky camera angle. They don't stagger easily from under the fire of your nail gun, so you'll often take a hit from them. You could try to run around them, but they have a generous grab attack that'll surely snag you. Caroline retains her jump back ability from the first game, and to this game's credit, it does work better, but I found it similarly unreliable in most cases. You have some stopping power in the form of the shotgun, which is rad and the best feeling gun in the game, but you don't want to waste that ammo on every basic enemy that you come across. Just about every single enemy you face has a similar level of mobility as these first dudes. Sightlines generally aren't long or clear enough to line up shots before they close in, making every fight not only an ammo sink, but also a health sink. Even these basic ass little crabs manage to tackle me if I want to smush them with my crowbar. Running from enemies also doesn't feel like much of an option. Like, they're so fast and the areas you cut through are generally so narrow that you can't juke them reliably. Like look at this. What the hell am I supposed to do here?
Damn. I can't see fucking shit out of this thing.
Not only are the environments closed in, the nature of a lot of these puzzles will see you backtracking, making trips to and from safe rooms, and generally just exploring a good amount of the time, so it's not really feasible to leave anything standing outside of a few instances. A staple of these old school survival horrors is picking and choosing your battles, right? Which hallway do I avoid because it's littered with enemies? Which wing of this mansion should I choose to clear out to make for safer travel around? These are questions that I should be asking myself when I play this, but here I just felt like I needed to mow down every enemy because I don't have the health to keep taking hits as I try to run past. And the ammo itself isn't too much of an issue unless you're actively trying to really waste it. It doles it out regularly enough and you probably always have something to use. Just like the first one, my biggest resource sink was the health, of which I constantly found myself wanting from cheap shots and ambushes. It just felt like the game threw me into a lot of unwinnable situations where it's almost like they wanted me to take damage. It's like the monsters got glow-ups from the first game, and as for Caroline, the developers just spent all their energy over designing her character. If you're playing on controller, you can use the analog stick to imitate those 3D controls that they added to the Resident Evil remasters. It works well enough, but I did find myself spinning around like a top when I moved from camera angles. But it offers a degree of mobility I found pretty useful going against these sped up enemies. And speaking of camera angles, while generally placed pretty well, they do not work well in a lot of these fights. I often found myself jerked around from one camera angle to another under the pressure of the monsters, only to get yanked around and take a hit or get stuck in that annoying loop where you're just jumping back and forth between scenes. Beyond that, like the first one, by all appearances, the only thing Caroline really fears is the dark, and you'll die almost instantly if you step foot in a shadowed space, even if that line sometimes is not clear at all. But you can't have your lighter out while you're fighting, so if you need to move during a fight with a monster, you might run back into the darkness that's hidden behind a change of camera angle. You can't fire your gun in the shadows, but you'll die in like 3 seconds anyway, so what's it matter? It all just feels a little overtuned. For what this game is, it just feels too fast, enemies are too numerous in the second half of the game, and the environmental challenges, like with the camera and the darkness stuff, make combat kind of frustrating to deal with a lot of the time. It's not a deal breaker, not at all, and there are moments where these things line up and it feels great, but it's not a slam dunk like the other aspects of the game are. There is definitely some soft lock potential with a couple of the bosses in the end game, so if you're not careful, you may want to play with the assisted difficulty if you want to guarantee a better time. Okay, well, that's it. Let's move on to the stuff that I had a lot of fun with, like the environments. I was actually really surprised by this. Funny enough, the least interesting part of this game is the opening. Small spoilers here, but you don't spend your entire time in Tormented Souls 2 in that weird church thing that it opens up in. I kind of rolled my eyes when I started playing because I was like, damn, they really can't quit this whole giant over-designed labyrinthine mansion thing that they're going for, with countless statues and paintings and overwhelming Christian imagery that would put the Sistine Chapel to shame. It just felt like they really wanted to one-up that mansion hospital thing from the first game, and that really felt accurate until you leave that place. Yeah, it's only one of several levels in the game, and I'm talking full-on levels here, not just outside areas or side segments. You have a mall area and a fish processing plant and a school later on. It's not just a mansion in the woods this time. You get to explore a couple of locations around a small city, and this goes a long way to make the world feel fleshed out. You can read some notes and come across some surprising environmental storytelling moments that show the greater town and how it was affected by whatever's going on in that covenant that you start the game in. I really enjoyed wandering around the empty streets and knifing through a shuttered mall, even if these two segments are smaller than the rest. I personally find these areas way scarier than the overtly creepy or atmospheric zones like the Covenant, because it's a normal place where something has gone incredibly wrong, as opposed to a place that looks designed to be inherently weird and off-putting, that inversion of normalcy that's really spooky to me. It's also due in no small part to the visuals. They did a really good job, and the developers leveraged their strengths in environmental design and camera work to set up some really impressive shots. Some of this baked-in lighting is fantastic. Dusty light filtering through weathered glass or hard shadows cutting across tile floors. I sometimes felt like I couldn't truly appreciate it because I always had to walk around with the damn lighter or flashlight out for fear of accidentally stepping into a shadow and just fucking dying. I'd have much rather relied on environmental lighting to lead the way most of the time, but that's whatever. You know, side note, as I write this, I'm realizing that I actually really like the whole shadows business. It does go a long way to giving the world some presence. It makes the place feel hostile and dangerous, knowing that your safety is only maintained by a spark and a wick and an old lighter. When you're down in some waterlogged basement, you know that you're only safe in that little pocket of light, and should an enemy come crawling out of the darkness, you better get out of there fast. It makes you aware of the environment around you in a really tangible way. As I went on, I found myself noting the lighting in the room and where I could run back to should I get ambushed, which I often was. It's a bespoke challenge and point of regular decision making that rewards your attention to detail, even if, again, it can get wonky sometimes, but it's good. Yeah, and as for the environments, there is a fish processing plant that is just too novel not to mention. I really like it. It's all nautical themed, fish nets and dive suits and weathered floorboards, like they used the planks from an old salt splashed fishing pier to fashion the hallways and walls. It's fun and creative. Hell, the monsters here are half crab, half man, wearing yellow fishing waders. Like, come on. Good job, guys. The aesthetics might be different, but the flow of the levels remain pretty intact, made up of long hallways and side rooms, unlockable cutbacks, and multiple floors to explore. Filling out that map, seeing how these stairs connect, or finding a way to unlock that door from the other side, slowly checking off each question mark as you explore, has never felt bad, and the levels unfold before you in such a steady clip that it's always exciting to keep pushing forward. I'm telling you, there is something that feels so good about wrapping up one of these locations and wading off into the next. You spend just enough time in each area to get a really good grasp of the ins and outs that you really feel ready to move on by the time you're done, but you're not sick of it either. It's refreshing and invigorating to feel like you've really completed a space. The pacing is on point in this game, much to my surprise. And while, yeah, the combat is kind of lame and the story is just sort of there, moving through these levels, piecing these puzzles together, and checking off those question marks on your map feels doled out incredibly well and nearly perfectly balanced. There isn't a lot of downtime, like you're almost always moving forward, but it's not railroaded either. The puzzle items are given out just evenly enough that you don't have too many directions to go in, but just enough that you might get mixed up or forget where that locked door was or walk past the hallway that you needed to explore. And one of the biggest factors to the flow of the game and how well it's paced is the puzzles. Yeah, the puzzles are much, much improved from the first game, and it seems to be the single biggest learning thing from the developers. They're pretty much perfect here. You'll come across some simple lock and key stuff, yeah, and those are great. You'll also come across some trickier ones that rely on knowledge of the environment or call upon information depicted in notes that you might have read an hour ago. Some of these are really fun, like one that asks you to mimic some actions depicted in paintings, or one that requires you to swap batteries from a door to an item that you need, opening up a shortcut with the door and then going back later for the batteries. You'll have to manipulate items in your inventory and examine them for hidden pieces or combine pieces to make the thing that you need. Yeah, most of these aren't real brain scratchers, but they give you something to chew on for a second to break up the exploration. There's a surprising amount of variation here, but they're mostly sensible and engaging. They're tricky enough that you might stop and think for a little bit or pace around to find the right note or location to reference, but never convoluted enough to feel tedious or break that pacing that they've got so well. You might sometimes feel like you don't have all the information you need to solve some of these, because with some puzzles, even the simple ones, they may give way more contextual information as to the solution, where others might be more obtuse without really any additional clues. Your mileage may vary, but it's leagues improved from Tormented Souls 1. They fit better here in the world and don't seem so out of left field. I could see where the developers drew these puzzles from, be it the story or the world as you explore, and most are tied in some way to a thing that you're doing or experiencing, and you're not just playing Simon Says with the fucking vending machine for the hell of it like in the first one. Well done. As for the story, I'm not going to talk too much about it. It's as rudderless and unimportant this time around as in the first game. For all the improvements they made, the developers really haven't figured out how to craft and convey a story in a compelling way. Like the first one, it takes all of 30 seconds before our heroine Caroline shows up at some weird-ass mansion and gets knocked out, separated from her sister, and sent on a mission to find her. It's a direct sequel with the evil powers that are so desperate to capture and control the sisters for their nefarious goals. It's rudderless. There's a spattering of cutscenes where Caroline struggles to understand what's going on, with infrequent appearances by other characters, all of whom are flatly and directly written.
Well, forgive me if this place makes me feel, you know, a little antsy. Who are you?
My name's Caroline. What's your name?
You don't look like one of the locals.
I'm not. I just came in on the train yesterday.
Small spoilers here, nothing major, but the big bad guys here want to summon their evil god because of course they do. But they use so much overtly Christian imagery, even referencing passages from the Bible. But the core of their cult doesn't seem to be spun off from anything Christian as far as I can tell. It's weird to have something so grounded in reality in the presence of the cult and then graft on this Lovecraftian god. I'd have liked to see them actually build out some cult based on Christian stuff that they're so overtly drawing from, and to make some effort to bridge the cult to what we see at the Covenant and sort of the greater background religious stuff. That doesn't really happen. It's kind of weird and falls back into that classic and annoying crazy cult does hilariously evil stuff, like put nuns in freezers when they're bad, or just sacrifice their children because, well, the god demands it. Gosh darn it, it's weak. Something I did really enjoy about the world building here is that the otherworld segments from the first game return, and while, yeah, it's literally just Silent Hill, it's also all nautical and briny, appearing more as some rusted over submarine, all barnacles and flaking metal, everything soaking in water and covered in tentacles. It's a really nice design choice that goes just far enough to give Tormented Souls some flavor that it's otherwise kind of lacking. Good job there. Also, the voice acting here is far and away the best part of the story presentation. Everybody brings their A game and they do their best with the dialogue that they're given. It's pretty sparse as most of the story is conveyed in background through the notes, but when it's here, it's really good.
Nothing's wrong. Or nothing that a stay at a fancy wellness retreat won't fix. Am I right?
All in all, it's better than Tormented Souls 1. While the pacing and gameplay is tuned to perfection, it doesn't feel like that level of care was put into advancements in their storytelling abilities. Yeah, man, Tormented Souls 2, it's good. It's really good. A staunch improvement over the first game in most visible ways, with some sharp spikes in quality in the exploration, environment, and puzzle design. While the combat feels better, it's way overtuned, and that maybe can be tweaked with patches as the game gets its legs. But as of the time of writing, it's a frustrating point. In small doses, it works fine, but often in dark hallways or up against shadows and finicky camera changes, you'll be annoyed by a lot of these encounters. The plot is as backseated and backloaded as the first one, so you're not missing much. Overall, the skill on display with the environmental design and general ease of exploration can buoy that a little bit, but like the first one, you're not walking away with anything substantial here. Those complaints aside, I really enjoyed my time with this game, a toothsome entry into the survival horror genre, and with some additional tuning in the combat and storytelling departments. I think with Tormented Souls 3, if we ever get one, it could go down as one of the greats. Thanks for watching.
Come on. We're only booked for a short stay, Anna.
What's going on here? Why is that weird man walking around the operating table with that weird chandelier in his hands?